early 20s, that was his claim as a child. He moved to England in 1962 and he taught at the University of Chicago. He became a consultant cardiothoracic surgeon at Harfield Hospital 1973. He's now a visiting professor at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Yakub, Fabian, I can't even say the names of the universities he's professor in, and he performed the first open heart surgery in Nigeria, 1974. Professor Sir Magdi Dawood was knighted for his services to medicine and surgery in 1991 and awarded Fellowship of the Academy of Medical Sciences 1998 and the Fellowship of the Royal Society in 1999. Some of his achievements: he established the Heart Transplant Center in UK and became the world's leading transplant surgeon. He has several procedures doctors and cardiologists in the audience will be familiar with. He's the master of the Ross procedure, or pulmonary autograft, including a randomized control trial. He pioneered the modern arterial switch operation, and he promoted the use of the left ventricular assisted devices, the LADs, for bridging to recovery. He established the Heart Science Center, Dr. Yakub Institute for Research into the causes and treatment of heart diseases. He established the Chain of Hope charity, which provides cardiothoracic surgical care to developing worlds, and he championed academic medicine, humanitarian surgery, and became an example of a minority Coptic surgeon, and we are very proud to have him with us today. Also to have his friend, associate and co-director, Professor Dr. Magdi Ishaq Hanna. Professor Magdi was born in Egypt in 1947, currently lives in London, although I think he lives in Aswan more than London. But he graduated from Ain Shams University in Egypt, was trained an orthopedic and spinal surgeon in United Kingdom. During his medical career, he pioneered the work on lower limb graded pressure stockings, which reduce the risk of DVTs and pulmonary embolism. Currently, these stockings are used worldwide in all types of surgery. He's currently the Vice Chairman of Aswan Heart Foundation and the Executive Trustee of Dr. Magdi Yakub Heart Foundation. It's always sad that it's so difficult and sometimes impossible to combine humility and being a giant. And we have two giants today with us here today. I will not take more time, but I just want to tell you that his presence today as a Coptic, Egyptian, Christian pioneer, both of them are really a major joy to our hearts, and the way Dr. Magdi treats people, regardless of ethnicity, religion, background, is really an amazing way of showing Christianity without partiality. And I think this is really how a Christian doctor needs to be, and those who are in the medical field here should be so honored to have the two Dr. Magdis with us, and I'll leave the microphone to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very kind words. Thank you, Father. I'm very impressed by so many people. A lot of young faces, older people, etc. Most impressive on a day like this coming to meet us Thank you. It is a privilege and an honor, really, to meet people like you, because one reason, and that is obviously you believe in the same values which both my colleague Magdi and myself and the people we work with in Aswan, but also in science and in the charity going around the world. So you share the same sentiment, the same values, and thank you for that. Now, I don't want to take too long, and I think the idea was to leave you in charge to ask whatever questions you want, rather than to give you a speech, because I'm not good at speeches. I'm more at home with scientific papers and so on. But it's so much better to have the audience, you, my God, a huge number, to be in charge. So you are in charge, and we are here to answer your questions. Dr. Magdi has some facts and figures about the center in Aswan, which perhaps with justification can be labeled our flagship, because it represents everything we stand for, treating people who are needy, the poor and the desolate, without discrimination whatsoever, as you have heard, regardless of color, creed, money, religion or anything. Treat them like human beings at the highest level, free of charge, and perform all that, particularly the complex operations and other types of cardiac or heart medicine and surgery intervention, and importantly train young Egyptians to perform all that. This is the mission statement, which you might see it spelled out in the papers, you will see. Train young Egyptians, because Egypt is full of talent, but it's also full of pain. There are a lot of people suffering, and if we can do something about it, but it has to be done by Egyptians, because that's what will last, because the name of the game, as you will hear from my colleague Magdi, Dr. Magdi Ishaq, sustainability is very, very important. So in the mission statement I talked about treatment at a high level, without discrimination, training of young Egyptians, and importantly research, because we believe that research is a descriptor of excellence, and there is no progress without research done by the Egyptian people, published in peer-reviewed journals around the world. It gives a lot of pleasure, dignity, but importantly insight into how to treat the patients at the highest level as a human being, but also always criticize ourselves to make sure that we move forward. With that, I think I will stop here and hand over to my colleague Magdi Ishaq, and then you take it, you will be in charge. Thank you.
First of all, really, I'm grateful for Dr. Joseph Ibrahim, Dr. Hani Ashamallah, for us being there. It is really, it warms my heart when I enter the room and I saw so many of you are here. And of course, a lot of credit goes because you are here, because Father Dawood Lamei is here. He is a man who have achieved highest honor and very well articulate in terms of spreading the good news, the same as Magdi have reached in his cardiothoracic career. So it has to be said that there's a three giant in this table, well, two. This morning was very strange, to tell you the truth. And yesterday, Rida Sanasius said the Episcopal Church next door to the Waldorf Astoria where we were staying, having a music and service for Sunday. And we both went, and there was a lot of praise for God, and the choir was singing for the Lord. And it was amazing because Magdi was sitting in the front row and I was sitting in the last row of the church, and it was nice to see the church was full with New Yorker. But the main sermon of the day, and that's where I come to, is just they were reading from James 2, where it said, faith without deed is a dead faith. Because it goes, if you have a lot of faith and there saw a man who's hungry and naked and have no clothes, and you say, go, the God bless you and will provide for you, and you do nothing, then your faith is worth nothing. It's a dead faith. That's good. So I'm not trying to compete with Abu Dawood. So but it really captured what Magdi and other people do in Aswan. Now, Aswan, like anything else, it's very difficult for me to give you a flavor of what it is about. And as they say, saying is believing. It is amazing. It is really oasis of high standard treatment and research in the middle of an absolute desert. And to bring to you the idea how Aswan look today, we have a 7-minute film which I like to share with you, was made by a German guy, right, who came to Aswan, and he was so impressed by the city, the people, and the Aswan Heart Center. So if we can just share that film, okay, because it will give you more about what Aswan is rather than what I can say in few words.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Heart disease does not spare anybody. It is currently #1 killer all over the world. But as it happens, 80% of the disease burden falls on developing countries, and we have to fight that. The idea was to go to the most neglected part of the country and established a center to serve the people, particularly the children, but all the others. The AHC should be a center of excellence to serve neglected population who have nothing else to go to, but also to offer these services at the very highest level, free of charge, regardless of who they are, their color, creed, or whatever. And we concentrate mainly on the very poor and desolate patients who happen to have very complex heart disease of any type. Neonatal cardiac surgery is very exact and needs a whole lot of specialized people, and particularly one-to-one care from the nurses, but also from the intensivists, cardiologists, and cardiac surgeons. There are no halfway solutions. It has to be exact. They do very well eventually if you make sure that everything is done properly. But they're not forgiving. If anything is not perfect, they just die. And things happen quickly. All the people working here are handpicked, and they chose themselves as well because they identify with what goes on. And what goes on is a commitment, and that commitment is not 9 to 5. If it is 3 a.m., we're going to be here at 3 a.m. It's also teamwork. We also have a culture of respecting the patient. Whoever he is, most of our patients are desolate. They really are suffering, they're poor. So the last thing you want to do is to treat them badly. The commitment is also to treat the patient as a human being at the highest level. And that is part of the culture, part of the commitment, part of the hospital, part of AHC. We have to do it. We love to do it. The research program is wide-based. It is integrated with the service, so you have that from bench to bedside and from bedside to bench all the time. So the information in the lab becomes handy for the patient. So research we think of as a necessity. It is not a luxury.
الأول كنت جاية خايفة جدا وكنت مش مطمنة وحاسة إن أنا يعني داخلة على حاجة صعبة جدا، لكن بعد ما عملت عملية وبقيت كويسة الحمد لله بقيت مبسوطة جدا هنا
لا كويس يعني الحمد لله. يعني أنا أكتر مكان حبيت المكان ده بصراحة، عشان هو يعني إني خلاني أنا كنت أحلم إني أعمل العملية لولدي يعني في يوم في الأيام، كنتش أحلم إني هعملها. كنت يعني حسيت إن ربنا يعني مش ممكن ربنا يساعدني إني أعملها ويخف ويعيش زي بنات الأطفال.
We are a charity. We accept donations. We want to raise in excess of $250 million to keep the center can live, or at least 70% of the expense of the center will be guaranteed forever, because we're very conscious that this center must continue. So that's the vision and the dream for the future.
Thank you very much. I will share with you some few facts about Aswan Heart Center really, and why and what we're trying to do in United States. It was two problems. The Prof and I and another nice guy called Dr. Anba Abraam have identified, and the two main problem, okay. There's a time will come where the Prof will get off the train, I will get off the train, that's nature of life, okay? But we want the name Magdi Yaqub Aswan Heart Center to live for decades and decades and decades, okay? After we all have gone. And the only way to do that, okay, is to achieve two things. First thing we need to achieve that we have trained good doctors to be able to do the job and to do the work to the standard Magdi Yaqub approved of. So it's his disciples, in another word, and the disciples will train disciples, and you all here accustomed to that story and you understand it very well. So that's what we call human resource sustainability. So the place is sustained and continue with the human resource. And I can share with you that we are about 75% there in completing human resource sustainability. We have a generation of young doctors who the Prof told you about the complex. We do the most complex cases in Aswan now. We don't do the simple, straightforward, because there's a lot of other doctors who can do that. These boys and girls, well, they are doctors, they are. The average age is 35, and they're capable of delivering the surgery to the standard Sir Magdi, or the Prof as he liked to be called, taught them to do it. And that is a great achievement in its own right. And it makes me comfortable that the future in that respect is rosy. Right. The second part of the equation, because without money you can do very little. And the Prof, inspired the government, said to us, look, as a charity you can even have up to 20% of your beds private, people who pay money. And we have a lot of debates, and Magdi Yaqub put his foot down and he said, there is no way we can accept any money, because at one stage people will be admitted on their ability to pay, and we don't want to do that, okay? We want to treat without money, really, we can't. So the whole idea, and what Magdi have referred to in this film, that we need about $250 million in the United States to set up endowment, our trust. The money wouldn't go to Egypt, but the proceed, the profit from the money goes to keep Aswan going. And that stays as endowment and locked to keep funding things. But we needed to do something very important. We needed to be registered with the IRS to be able for people to get thank you. Are you an accountant? But, and we have successfully, due to the effort of Rida Sanasius and Ali Al-Hamamsi, who is a big shot in New York lawyers, to be able to get what they call what you call 501c, which will exempt any donor from, which will make it tax deductible. So we are registered, and Rida keep reminding me we managed to get it in 2 months' time. And you know all the difficulty if you trying to set a charity, which really its proceed, or part of its proceed goes to Egypt or to the Middle East in general. These days it's difficult, but we have succeeded and we got approved in 2 months' time, which is a record really. That's where we are, and so let us really share with you some of these facts. What this tell you, for every $100 or £100 I get in Aswan, that's how I'm spending it. I spend about 35 of it in consumable. The Bay rule, that's doctors and nurses and technicians and researchers, 35 pounds or dollars, and the actual cost of the research is 8. But I think the important figure you go down is the one before the last, the admin cost. We're very keen to spend very little money on administration, and we only spend £3 of every $100, $3 of every $100 we get on all the admin work in Aswan. I think that's a figure any charity will be proud to have. This is really how much Aswan cost me every year. In the year 2012, we spent about 46 million Egyptian, these figures in Egyptian money, okay? And currently, this year, this figure now is 160 million. So you really can see our cost per year have increased enormously. That's because we do more children, we do more adult, we do more expensive surgery. I tell you one of the things which is really some of the simple statistics which grip me. I was talking to somebody from Cleveland, and I was saying how many hokum you do a year. I think the one who's medical of you will understand what I mean by hokum anyhow. And he said we may do about 5 or 6, and in Aswan we do about 46 to 50 hokum a year. That's amazing. Now, the outcome as well. We do, and the Prof is keen on that, to exercise some of the most rigorous clinical audit on Aswan. And when we compare our mortality figure or our morbidity figures, you know what? We are at par with Cleveland. But I do believe if we start to look at the figure more closely, trust me, we are better than Cleveland. And I will tell you why. Because the patient we have, or who come to us, usually have a chest infection. Usually he have malnutrition. Usually he's dehydrated. Usually he have skin ulcers. It's really, we're starting from a very low base. So if you start from a low base, and Cleveland is starting from a high base, so if you adjusted these figures, you will find that our mortality and morbidity is better than Cleveland. And that scientifically and statistically, and one day we will be publishing that. But I really want to share it with you to know that what's been done in Aswan is fantastic. Now, we build a lot of things in Aswan. We have imaging center, which one of the best in the world, if not the world, at least in the Middle East. I know it's best than what we have in UK. I can't speak for US, for United States. And building the asset value, what we own in Aswan now, what Magdi Yaqub Center own in Aswan, is at the value of 161 million pound, and the movable asset is about 11 million pound. So what we established there is something you can see and you can feel, and worth about 180 million Egyptian pound. Now we come to the endowment. What we've done so far, and the 160 million we spend every year, and all these buildings have came from a generous donor. And I have a story here to share with you. After the, what you call it, was it called the spring?
Arab Spring.
What?
Arab Spring.
Yeah, after the Arab Spring or the Arab Winter or whatever you want to call it, you have your choices anyhow. Most of our money, most of our donation came because from the rich people and the rich big families. And in particular, to be honest with you, Samih Sawiris. Okay? Then the Arab Spring came, and it was a great confusion, and people didn't know how it will end, because you started something, and there was a great deal of insecurity. And by May 11, we're really in the dire strait. We have no money. We really have no money at all. Then, I think Ramadan came in September, and people start to donate money. And this particular year, we have about 320 million pounds donated by members of the public. And most of it came in the forms of £100, £1,000, £200. And I kept asking myself, it didn't come from the rich people, it came from the small people. And I kept asking myself, what happened? I mean, we never really achieved that figure in any Ramadan before the winter spring, Arab Spring. And I kept asking myself, why? And I came to my own conclusion, and I think it is correct. What this revolution shows, it shows that the fig leaf, which was covering a lot of people, have fallen. And a lot of people who were icons in the Egyptian society became discredited. and one person stay as a رمز للإنسان المصري الذي يعطي ولا يطلب اللي هو مجدي يعقوب. To me, that's why that happened and why people start to help us with the 100 pound and the 1,000 pound. And if you look at any charity in the world, it's not the big people who keep it going, it's the small people. This is the number of cases we do في جراحة القلب. الأحمر ده أطفال والأدلت والكبار أزرق. In سنة 2014 we did about 439 children with complex disease, and we did the 370. All in total really we did about 800 plus في 2014, and Dr. Magdi have a target for us which to do 1,000 cases per year. I really must share with you about the things we do. I talked about Hokum and I talked about things like that. But 2 years ago, or 18 months, the Prof decided to introduce something we call LVAD, or mechanical heart. Because we have people in Egypt who are due to die if we don't do either heart transplant or give them the mechanical heart. Okay? And I want to tell you two things. The first thing is, for every one patient we fit a mechanical heart, it costs us 1.7 million Egyptian pound per patient, okay? And when I say to Prof, that's too much cost, and he said, life of human being cannot be measured by money. And the second story about the mechanical heart, which I want to share with you, and people say we don't live in the age of miracles. That is all about science and God is a backseat. It's not. Okay, it's a combination of both. And I remember with a family who have genetically inherited heart disease, which when they become teenagers or adult, their heart starts to fail and they doomed to die. There's nothing you can do about it except to do a heart transplant or to put a mechanical heart. And we have the older child. Well, he's not a child, he was about 22, 23, 21. And we have him in, and we prepared them in Aswan, and we decided to get the mechanical heart for him. But sadly enough, because of the bureaucracy and the permission we need to go through, and this and that, and the registration with the Wizard al-Sahha, the heart delayed, the mechanical heart delayed, and this child died. This young man died. Okay, it was, and after him by a week, the device arrived. His second brother had the device fitted in, and he's still alive and doing very well. So that's God's wisdom why one goes and one because of the Egyptian bureaucracy and the other stay. That's really how many cases of MRI, CT scan, X-ray we do, and you can see the total now reaching is about 16,000 investigation per year. That's how many patients we see in the outpatient. And I can tell you, so far, we have seen this year 10,000. So we broke the figures of 2014. Right, can you ask, where's the intervention? The cath lab is not, Aswan is not only about cardiac surgery. We do cardiac intervention and cath lab. And you can see in 2014 we did 2013 تقريبا 500 منهم أطفال. Okay? That's the number of people we employ currently, and I think we have about 172 nurses, and all our nurses actually speak English, and they do the round with the prof in English. So these people who say the Egyptian nurses are rubbish, are crap, they cannot do it, they are wrong. It's just if you bring them in the right environment, if you teach them, if you give them a decent wage, they do well. Want to ask you, and sorry me to ask, if you can help us to set the endowment, I'll be very grateful. And I think Hani have all the details. You do, Hani, isn't it? Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for having us. And
Sir, Professor Dawoud is accepting some questions. I'll start with the first one, since I'm here. Sir, people who take a higher rank, whether doctors or other professions, are easily fooled by their ego and easily defeated by their self-image. They want to hear themselves, they want to people talk about them. How were you able, with all your achievements, to keep yourself humble and your ego never broke you?
Thank you for that question. I think you're absolutely right that ego can defeat the purpose of the exercise. And I had a formula which says ego equals 1 over knowledge. So the more knowledge you have, the lower your ego goes. And the reason for that is obvious. Because if you're discovering things, if you're doing things, you find that what you have discovered actually is a fraction of what remains to be discovered. So you get smaller. You discover something else and you find it's a huge mountain, and therefore you're chasing the truth. And many philosophers say that the truth, the ancient Egyptians knew it, as a matter of fact, that the truth is unachievable. Maat, the goddess of the truth, if you came near her, she flew away. So, in pursuit of the truth or excellence, we realize that we really are tiny. And if we waste time in inflating our ego, like you have said, it's a massive waste of time.
So we are open for questions, but before we take the second one, may I ask Dr. Michel Habib and Dr. Ayman Iskandar, both of them are cardiologists. They are welcome to ask questions, but I would like them also to go through 1 year and 1 year to collect the checks that people may like to donate to My Aswan. As you have heard, the sustainability of that project is threatened, and it's our job, like many others, to help. So, next question, anyone? Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure. Beyond words, we're very proud of you both, and blessed to have you. But to what do you attribute your big heart? Was it one situation? Was it your upbringing? Was it your mom? Was it the church? What gave you such a wonderful desire to be this kind and generous to everyone?
Thank you for asking that question. Honestly, I cannot answer that. I try hard. And you've mentioned everything. I think it is genetics, as you said, and the mom and the dad and the environment and the religion and the people, and most importantly, what have impressed me in my life is humanity, and seeing firsthand how humanity, people suffer, and that has been the driving force.
If doctors want to help, not just financially, but is there a venue that for different doctors when they visit Egypt, would it be possible for them to help medically, or is that difficult with the bureaucracy in Egypt to be able to practice back home? That's one question. The other question that I'm really intrigued by, so when such a surgery happens to a patient, there is aftercare that's really key. It's really physical therapy, and sometimes the heart transplant it's like the wedding day. It's not the end. It's actually the beginning of a life of real challenges. And how could that? How do you guys do it? That's my question.
I'll answer the last question first, if I may. You're absolutely right that follow-up is fundamental. And when we started, we realized that there was no record in Egyptian hospitals, and that we could not trace what the patient has had, not a single note. So we've spent a massive amount of time, energy and money on having a follow-up system and a computerized system of IT, which actually, because we have a lot of investigations, as you have heard, we have the latest MRI, CT, catheter lab, everything is recorded, and we insist that the patients come to see us. And as the numbers are mounting, we have to establish outpatient clinics to see them, to chase them, to make sure that they come and be seen, because what you have said, the treatment is just the beginning of a lifetime commitment, and we see absolute disasters in simple things like anticoagulation following valve replacements. And we talk to our colleagues in Cairo, they see blocked valves, like 6 in a weekend, dying because of clotted valves. And they have to operate. I mean, I couldn't believe the story that they say we can't cope, so we choose 2 out of the 6 to operate on them and unblock the valve. The others die. That's a direct effect of lack of follow-up. So this year we are opening a new building. We call it research labs. It's research building, but actually we took the opportunity to have 9 outpatient clinics because of the massive pressure on patients who want to be seen. But most importantly, the patient must come back and be followed up. And we have systems of anticoagulation, and everybody have a record in the hospital which is computerized. We spend a whole lot of money on computerization of the records, which is fundamental. In the same building, I will just mention that there is research with sequencers and the latest science, but also a conference center, and most importantly, We have in the same building, which is doubling up as many things, what we call a patient hotel, because all our beds, the occupancy is over 95%, and many times we cannot operate because all the beds are full. And therefore now we have a patient hotel. The patients can stay in the hotels which is inside the hospital. We can still look after them, and they will be with their families to just increase our output. So your point about the follow-up is very, very well taken, but it requires a massive amount of energy, which is in the forefront of our minds. Medical care given by expertise, I really cannot answer that. There is a degree of bureaucracy, but there are many, many chances of how expertise from outside Egypt can be used. We do make use of a lot of visiting people, but other hospitals, we're thinking of having a charity called, there is something called Honduras Global, which we have a lot of the experts coming in an organized fashion to help Egypt. In our center, we are a bit saturated because we're training the young people, and we do get experts to give lectures, the top experts like Brugada and other people, Bobono, other people, for short periods of time, but the emphasis is on training the residents who can do everything. We welcome help whenever, but I'm sure there will be other opportunities around Egypt as well.
Again, checks should be written to my Aswan. If you want to give cash, it's okay. Also, if you can put it in an envelope, I hope doctors, you are passing the envelopes, and once they are ready, you can come here. If it comes later, I'll manage to meet Dr. Joseph and send it. Next question, please.
It is a great honor and privilege for us to meet with you, with two legends like yourselves, and of course with Dawood Lamei with us for the past couple of days. The question for you is, Sir Fr.Daoud, with a lot of people, with a lot of young people in the room, what would you advise them in terms of pursuing their careers, pursuing success, and achieving similar prestigious status like yours? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure they can achieve more because they can build on what has happened. But it's very difficult. The only two things which come to mind is hard work, perseverance, and believing in what they do. And in believing in what they do, I think it's really important. I call it passion, like falling in love, and so you never let go. And that is how it is an incredibly demanding specialty, but also rewarding. It's not all limelights. It's far from that. It is late nights, sweat and toil, blood, you call it whatever. But the important thing is the passion for the profession and the fact that it is a privilege. Privilege in what way? I'm sure I'm not speaking about something original, but one of the most satisfying things, or the two satisfying things in life, is one seeing somebody who's dying and suddenly coming, looking the picture of health. I see babies who are almost terminal, They see them as young ladies, 25 years, wow, that's incredible. Transplant patients, we used to think it would be good if they survive a year or two. Now, from our unit, Harefield, we have the record in Guinness Book of Records, 34 years after heart transplantation, and the chap is a picture of health, has had a happy 34 years. That's incredible. So that gives a lot of satisfaction. And the next other satisfaction, if you discover something new, which was not known, and suddenly you write up something, wow, and that will benefit many, many people. So that's a lot of satisfaction. But there is nothing for nothing. You pay, you have to work hard, you have to have the sweat and toil, and you have to have the passion.
Any other questions?
I know heart transplant in America because it's maybe more easier than Egypt because now you can be a donor on your license. But in Egypt, it must be hard. Like not the mechanical heart, the heart transplant. And another question is how to evaluate the financial situation of a patient coming to you so you make sure they need the help is given to the right person?
Thank you. The first question is, if I understood it rightly, is organ donation. We are campaigning on that because Egypt is almost the only country in the Middle East which has not legalized brain death and organ donation. And we have succeeded with Dr. Muhammad Ghanem when we were taking part in writing the Constitution and putting an item saying organ donation is a gift of life, which it is, and it should be legalized and it should be regularized by the government and legal. That will take some time because and correct me, Abuna, the church and the Azhar actually agreed that this is something which can save lives and it should be done and it should be explored. And I think people are dragging their feet in getting the legalization and the thing happening. What was your second question?
How do you evaluate the patients?
Oh, we don't.
Abuna
will tell us about the organ donation first.
Definitely the sacrifice given by anyone for anybody with money, with effort is much less and cheaper than giving an organ or giving the whole life. So the church recommends this organ donation during life and after life. That's the idea of the church.
Okay, so that's very clear. Thank you, Abuna. We do not look into the patient's affairs. I said that we give a preference to the poor and the desolate, but that is just looking at them, and we do not say how rich you are because we don't charge. We don't charge even the very rich. And that has been, like Dr. Magdis has just said, people say, but why don't you charge the rich and use it for the poor? The Robin Hood phenomenon sort of thing, take from the rich and give to them. And we have been averse to that. And what we say to the rich, we will treat you for free. And if you elect to pay and save 20 children, we will be very grateful, but we will not send you a bill. And interestingly, some of them, most of them do pay, some don't. But interestingly, we had a very rich family actually gave us a huge donation towards the building I was telling you about, because of the fact, the reason they said we had to wait and see that we were treated equally to the very poor, and we were not ahead of them, and we had to wait our turn, and we admire that. We like it. And it was the opposite to what you would expect. It's, my God, you kept me 3 hours, and there was this poor, dirty person who came ahead of me. But every human being is a human being. So we do not assess the means. We leave it to them. Have I answered your question? Yes. Thank you.
There is one question related to the matter of Salah.
I always get the difficult one. This basic question, I heard it before.
Can you repeat the question, please?
No, is about. Can you give me 2 minutes, please? Is a written question, bro. This question, which related about the accessibility of Christians to Magdi Yaqub Foundation Aswan, and the number of doctors who work there, and the number of doctors who work there, and also talk about the Sawiris Nursing Institute, معهد تمريض بتاع ساويرس في الجونة. Let me talk to you about a few things. I heard that when I was here in New York a year ago, more than a year ago. I heard it 3 years when I was in San Francisco, and it keep coming. So I decided, okay, to go and look at the approximately 7,000 cases we treated so far, okay? And because we don't discriminate, so we don't write Masihi or Muslim على الورق. We don't really mention the religion at all. So, but أسامينا كلنا stands out anyhow. So I go to Ashanna, Hnain, Mor'os, غيره, okay? And I start to say, and I can assure you, 23% of the people we treated, they all, either adult or children, they all Christian. So 23% represent even more than what our actual population is, okay? Now, come to the critical thing, why we don't have Christian doctors? No, I mean, we do. We have 4 of them already, and I'm not going to name them, but we do have 4. And the problem is, when we employ people, we go through scientific criteria. And in all the application I've seen, okay, I don't make decision for which doctor should be employed, but the decision I make, should I pay him or not. So basically, we have a very strict, unbiased interview committee. But let me tell you that we don't have an applicant, too many applicants who are Christians. They don't apply, okay? And the only boy we have, one of the boys we have, he preferred Abu Rish to Aswan. And that was sad. That was very sad, really. Now, معهد التمريض بتاع يسرية ساويرس, I am the one who set it up. I'm helped her to set it up. And I am the one who recruited people from the nursing school in Glasgow to be running it. So the vice dean is a girl from Scotland, and as it happens, she is Catholic. But I'll tell you something very interesting. Since we opened till about 9 months ago, رئيس التمريض دايما used to be somebody from England. So we have 2 or 3 ladies from England, ودول كانت بتبقى شغلتها رئيسة هيئة التمريض كلها. She's the director of nursing. 9 months ago, we decided that واسمه أمين إيه؟ Amin Naim, who was one of the nurses we have to be the director of nurses. And I can tell you, he's a Christian, but I can tell you, this boy have proved that he's much better from the English or the Scottish director of nurses we have. So it is working, and give us time.
I know you may have not many questions, but because of their time, I just want to formally thank Dr. Fr.Daoud because of something he may remember. This retreat is sort of sponsoring another non-profit organization called Life for Orphans, which helps a lot of orphans. And the Life for Orphans sent Professor Dr. Sir Fr.Daoud, a child from Helwan, 2 years ago with a septal ventricular septal defect 2 years ago, and he did the surgery successfully. This young girl is growing happily, and she was one of our orphans. So I think that settles the question about who goes what and what type of background.
That's my point. Remember the Good Samaritan, the parable given by the Lord himself. You know, this Samaritan man served somebody who had never moved before, and this one was different in religion, in country, in everything.
Yep.
And the people of the man of the same country did not help him, of the same religion did not try to help him. So according to the teaching we follow, we shouldn't even ask this question. We need to help everyone. We need to serve.
Thank you.
There are people who sent us some medical questions written. Please speak with me. Dr. Magdi Ishaq formally agreed that if you meet them in Cairo or Aswan, they will be happy to help you.
Send me an email.
Or send you an email with the images. I have the information, so those papers, whoever wrote in Arabic or English medical, we should not be, of course, discussing.
Yeah, there is a question here which says, do you consider the 184 million in Bill Gates Foundation and NGO, USAID funding and non-governmental organization? Thank you for that. I think we are considering that particularly for research, and there are, the NIH has written to Aswan saying that asking us to collaborate in some research funding, and USAID as well. There are grants which shared between American universities and Aswan, and we're going to seek some of that funding. But up till now, we haven't been granted. We have been granted a big grant from the Egyptian Research and Development Organization for Research, but Aswan Health Center doesn't get a penny. I mean, not a penny, not من وزارة الصحة. And that's because we didn't ask for it, because we value the independence of the center. We can move, we can do things. We are transparent, They can see the books, and we have, like what Dr. Magdi said, a massive auditing, costing, results, anything, procedures. They can come and see that, but we don't want money and we don't want to be part of Wizard Saha. We help them, but don't expect funding from them. We do, sometimes they do pay something we don't ask for, because we have a program of primary PCI. That's people who have heart attacks and they're rushed to the hospital, and we have people on duty who open the blocked artery within an hour, and that is a service we give to the community for free. So that's all that I can say. Thank you.
I just want to mention to the two giants that amongst us a lot of doctors and healthcare caregivers who are going to meet later today, and we go for many missions, whether in Egypt or in Africa, and many of us here, actually I remember 3 intervention cardiologists have to be actually in this audience today. If you think there is any need or help, I'm sure they would love to cooperate, and just maybe they can email you their CV or something, whatever they have a week in the year, they would love to come and help. I'm sure they do that. Finally, on your behalf, I'm thanking you so much, the honor and privilege of having Professor Sir Dr. Fr.Daoud and Professor Dr. Magdi Ishaq. Thank you very much.